Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchat, or Pra Ajahn Suchat Abhijato, who has given me the very special honor of being asked by him to record this book for you. This book was written by Pra Ajahn Suchat's own teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and is a spiritual biography written by him about his teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Biography. The title of the book is Venerable Acariya Mun Biography, a spiritual biography by Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and it was published in 2005, translated into English by Bhikkhu Dick Silaratano. If you would like to learn how to download or get a hard copy of this book, or a list of which pages or chapters are read on each separate recording, please listen to the beginning of the first recording of this book. This book, in any form, is to be given away for free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with, for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, as I'm still learning how to pronounce Thai and Pali, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We're continuing today on page 119. We are in chapter 2, and we're starting a new section titled The Well Digging Incident. A strange incident occurred while he was staying near the village of Nanasampanno. It was the dry season. About 60 to 70 monks and novices were living there, and there was not enough clean water available. The monks held a meeting with the villagers and decided that they would have to dig the existing well deeper in order to acquire a clean, adequate supply. After the decision was made, a senior monk requested permission from Acariya Mun to proceed with the work. After listening to the request, Acariya Mun remained quiet for a moment before he answered sternly in a rough voice, "No, it could be dangerous." That was all he said. The senior monk was puzzled by the words, "it could be dangerous." After paying his respects to Acariya Mun, he related the conversation to the monks and the lay people. Instead of agreeing with Acariya Mun, they decided to proceed secretly with the plan. The well was some distance from the monastery. At noon, when they thought Acariya Mun was resting, they quietly went out to dig. They had not dug very deep when the earth around the top edge gave way and collapsed into the well, leaving a gaping hole at ground level and ruining the well with loose earth. Everyone was terrified. Having disrespectfully ignored Acariya Mun's warning and showing a lack of mindfulness by failing to call off the project, they had caused the earth to cave in, almost killing someone in the process. They were afraid he would find out what they had done against his express wishes. They were extremely worried and felt chastened by their error. Together, they quickly gathered wood to repair the mouth of the well, praying all the while for Acariya Mun's assistance in their efforts to dig out the loose earth and restore the well for use again. Fortunately, once they appealed for Acariya Mun's help, everything was put into good order with amazing ease, so that some of them even ended up smiling. As soon as the work was completed, everyone fled the scene, afraid that Acariya Mun might suddenly show up. Back in the monastery, the monks and novices remained in a state of constant anxiety about what they had done. The closer it came to the evening meeting, the more apprehensive they became. They could all vividly remember Acariya Mun's scoldings in the past when something of this nature had happened. Sometimes, when they did something inappropriate and then forgot, Acariya Mun knew and eventually brought it up as a way of teaching a lesson. The well incident was a serious misdeed that was committed by the whole monastery behind his back. How could he possibly have not known about it? They were all certain that he knew and that he was bound to mention it that evening, or at the latest, the very next morning. They were preoccupied with these uncomfortable feelings for the rest of the day. As it turned out, when the time arrived, no meeting was called. Instead of scolding them, Acariya Mun mentioned nothing about the incident. Acariya Mun was very astute in teaching his disciples. He knew very well about the incident and about many other mistakes made by the monks and novices. But he also knew about their anxiety. Since they obviously realized their mistake, scolding them at that point would have needlessly increased their deep remorse. Acariya Mun's early morning routine was to rise from seated meditation at dawn, then do walking meditation until it was time to put on his robes at the meeting hall before going for alms. The next morning, when Acariya Mun left his walking path and entered the meeting hall, the monks were still worried about how he would deal with them. While they waited in anxious anticipation, Acariya Mun turned the whole affair around by speaking gently and in a comforting manner designed to relieve their distress. We came here to study Dhamma. We should not be unreasonably audacious, nor should we be excessively afraid. Anyone can make a mistake. The value lies in recognizing our mistakes. The Lord Buddha made mistakes before us. He realized where he had gone wrong and strove to correct his errors as soon as he became aware of them. This kind of intention is noble, but still, through ignorance, mistakes can happen. From now on, you should all take care to control yourselves under all circumstances. Using mindfulness at all times to watch out for oneself is the way of the wise. That was all he said. He just smiled broadly at the monks in a disarming way and took them on alms round as usual. There was no meeting later that evening. Acariya Mun merely told everyone to be diligent in their practice. 3 nights passed without a meeting. All during that time, the monks and novices were still scared he would scold them about the well-digging incident. On the 4th night, a meeting was called, but again, no mention was made of the incident, as though he knew nothing about it. A long time later, after everyone had forgotten about the matter, it quite unexpectedly cropped up. No one had ever told him about the mishap, for the whole affair had been hushed up. Acariya Mun himself never went to the well, which was quite a distance from the monastery. He began a Dhamma discourse as he usually did, speaking about various aspects of a monk's practice, about being reasonable, and about having respect for the teacher and Dhamma. These, he said, led to the correct behavior of those coming to train and practice under a teacher. He stressed that they should especially take the issue of cause and effect very seriously, for this was the true Dhamma. Although you're constantly under pressure from your desires, you shouldn't allow them to surface and intrude into the sphere of practice. Otherwise, they will destroy Dhamma, the tried and true way to go beyond dukkha, gradually spoiling all of your hopes. Never should you go against Dhamma, the monastic discipline, or the word of a respected teacher, as this is equivalent to destroying yourselves. Disobedience merely gives impetus to those bad habits which are destructive to you and others as well. The earth around that well was more than just clay. There was also sand underneath. Digging too deeply can cause the sand, then the clay, to collapse into the well, possibly burying and killing someone. That was why I forbade it. I thoroughly investigate everything before giving or refusing permission for any type of work. Those who are here for training should consider this. Some matters are exclusively internal, and I don't feel it necessary to reveal every aspect of them. What I did reveal was clear enough for you to understand. So why did you behave as if you didn't? When I forbid something, you go ahead and do it anyway. If I tell you to do something, you do the opposite. This was not a matter of misunderstanding. You understood perfectly well. Being contrary like this displays the stubborn side of your character, dating from the time you lived with your parents, who tolerated it just to keep you happy. It has now become an ingrained characteristic buried deep inside monks who are now adults. To make matters worse, you flaunt it in the face of your teacher and the spiritual life you lead. Stubbornness in a monk of your age is unforgivable and cannot be tolerated as mere childish behavior. It deserves a stern reprimand. If you persist in being stubborn, it will further entrench this unfortunate trait in you, so that you will be appropriately branded as obstinate Dhutanga monks. Thus, all your requisites should be labeled the belongings of an obstinate monk. This monk is stubborn. That monk is shameless. The monk over there is dazed, until the whole monastery ends up doggedly disobedient, and I end up with nothing but hard-headed students. Once obstinacy becomes the norm, the world will break up from the strain, and the sasana will surely be reduced to ruin. Which of you still want to be a hard-headed monk? Is there anyone here who wants me to be a teacher of hard-headed monks? If so, go back tomorrow and dig out that well again, so the earth can collapse and bury you there. Then you will be reborn in a hard-headed heavenly paradise where the devas can all come and admire your true greatness. Surely no group of devas, including those in the Brahma realms, have ever seen or lived in such a peculiar paradise. After that, the tone of his voice became gentler, as did the theme of his talk, enabling his audience to wholeheartedly reflect on the error of their stubborn disobedience. During the talk, it seemed as if everyone had forgotten to breathe. Once the talk was over and the meeting adjourned, the monks excitedly questioned one another to find out who might have dared inform Acariya Mun of the incident, prompting this severe scolding which nearly made them faint. Everyone denied informing him, as each dreaded a scolding as much as another. The incident passed without a definitive answer as to how Acariya Mun knew. Since his time at Sarika Cave, Acariya Mun possessed a mastery of psychic skills concerning all sorts of phenomena. Over the years, his proficiency grew to such an extent that there seemed to be no limit to his abilities. As the monks living with him were well aware of these abilities, they took strict care to be mentally self-controlled at all times. They couldn't afford to let their minds wander carelessly, because their errant thoughts could become the subject of a Dhamma talk they might receive at the evening meeting. They needed to be especially vigilant during the meeting when Acariya Mun was actually speaking to them. In those brief moments when he stopped speaking, perhaps to catch his breath, perhaps to observe something, if he detected any stray thought among the monks, he immediately made an issue of it. The tone of his voice changed dramatically as he mimicked the unmindful thoughts of one of those present. Although Acariya Mun did not mention anyone by name, his tone immediately startled that individual, who became quite frightened to even dare think like that again. Another time to be careful was when they followed him on alms round. Those who were unmindful then were bound to hear about their wayward thoughts at the next meeting. Sometimes it was very embarrassing to have to listen to a talk on one's own wayward thoughts as other monks cast sidelong glances around the assembly, not knowing who among them was being reprimanded. But once discovered, all the monks and novices tended to react similarly in a positive manner. Instead of feeling angry or disappointed after leaving the meeting, all would appear cheerful and content. Even some laughed as they inquired of each other, "Who was it today? Who got caught today?" It's remarkable how honest they were with their fellow monks about their errant thoughts. Instead of trying to keep his indiscretion a secret, the guilty monk would confess as soon as someone asked. I'm really stubborn and I couldn't help thinking about ... even though I knew I was bound to get told off for thinking like that. When those thoughts came up, I forgot all about my fear of Acariya Mun and just felt full of myself thinking such crazy thoughts. I deserved exactly what I got. It will teach me a good lesson about losing my self-control. I would like to apologize to the reader because I don't feel very comfortable about writing down some of these matters. But these stories are factual. They actually happened. The decision to include them was a difficult one to make. But if what I recount is the truth, it should be all right. It could be compared to a situation in which a monk confesses to a disciplinary offense as a means of eliminating any sense of guilt or anxiety about its recurrence in the future. Thus, I would like to relate a few incidents from the past to serve as food for thought for all of you whose thoughts may cause you similar problems. In most cases, practicing monks received a severe rebuke from Acariya Mun because of affairs pertaining to external sense objects. For example, sights and sounds are the most likely sense impressions to cause trouble, and the most likely occasion for monks to be scolded was the morning alms round. Walking to the village for alms is an essential duty of every monk. On these occasions, monks encounter sights and sounds and are bound to think about them. Some become so infatuated with what they encounter that their thoughts swirl into disarray without their actual knowledge. These are the primary causes of mental distraction, enticing the mind even when one has no desire to think about them. By the time a monk regained mindfulness, it was time for the evening meeting, and the tongue lashing he received would prompt him to try to be more controlled. After a time, he again encountered the same enticing objects and reopened the sore. Upon returning to the monastery, he would receive another dose of strong medicine in the form of another scolding to apply to his sore. A great many monks and novices lived with Acariya Mun, and most of them had such festering sores. If one monk didn't get a dose of his medicine, then another did. They went to the village and were confronted by attractive sights and sounds until they were unable to stay out of trouble. Consequently, upon their return to the monastery, when the opportunity arose, Acariya Mun would have another go at them. It's natural for someone with kilesas to have a mixture of good and bad thoughts. Acariya Mun did not give a lecture for every bad thought. What he criticized was the tendency to think in harmful ways. He wanted them to think in terms of Dhamma, using mindfulness and wisdom, so that they could free themselves from dukkha. He found that instead of easing their teacher's burden with rightful thinking, monks preferred to think in ways that troubled him. Since many such monks lived with him, there were scoldings nearly every evening. All of this serves to illustrate that Acariya Mun's subtle ability to know the thoughts of others was very real. As for those reprehensible thoughts, they did not arise intentionally, but accidentally, due to occasional lapses in mindfulness. Nevertheless, as a teacher imparting knowledge and skill to his students, Acariya Mun quickly sounded a warning when he noticed something inappropriate, so that the perpetrator could become conscious of his lapse and learn to be more self-controlled in the future. He did not want his students to get trapped into such thinking again, for it promotes habitual thought patterns that lead directly to misfortune. We're going to end there today. We are in the middle of the section titled The Well Digging Incident in Chapter 2, and we're going to continue on the same page 125 in the next recording, and we'll start on the second full paragraph on page 125. It takes a little teeny bit of a turn, so I think this is a good place to break this up. So until next time with Metta, bye-bye.